This is the City of Moscow Public Works Finance Committee meeting of March 10. I'm Walter Steve, Chairman, President of the Moscow City Council. To my right is Dan Karskalen, Moscow City Council member. To my left, Art Betke, Moscow City Council. And to his left is Acting City Supervisor Bill Belknap. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the February 24 minutes.
I would move their approval.
Me too.
And I have no problem. Let's consider them approved. Bill, please. Item 2, Don Palmer has been spending money.
I need your pen.
Is that my phone?
Well, I got to wait before I sign it, tell you.
Good evening. Afternoon. I'm here to discuss the disbursements report for the month of February. The February report has $2,025,174.61 in expenses to date through the month, for that month, and payroll was $891,300. Professional services was $287,500. Within that number, several things that happened. One is some well repair, $51,426. A quarterly payment for dispatch services to Whitcomb for $124,000, Spillman $14,335, and then there was an array of other things. Insurance is the workers' comp for $246,600, sanitation $251,000, utilities $91,100, equipment $53,000, construction $30,700, sewer bond and agent fees, which is really the interest due on the sewer bonds, for $17,000, grants $15,000, supplies $13,600. Those categories represent $1,896,800, which is roughly 94% of the total for the month of February. And I think I mentioned the workers' comp was an annual.
That's an annual payment?
Annual payment.
Okay.
Any questions?
Which well?
6, I'm sorry. There was also some other work, and I need that report back that shows some other well work, and I can't remember which one. I'd have to look. I can't remember. It's in that book you've got, Dan.
What are you looking for?
Back.
Who should borrow the book?
There's a blue section there that I think was well. So I'm just looking at that downstairs, so better let me sit on my desk.
I didn't know I was going to hold this up like this.
Well, no, number 9 was 15,000. The other well was 6. So.
Either one of you people from engineering know what was done for $15,000 on well 9? Okay.
It was the vendor's Ulster. That's all I know.
We were just hoping we were through spending money on that well for a day or two.
Well, number 9.
Someday.
And now Lewiston's got one with some type of problem with their big well, too, so.
Well,
anyway.
Be maintained.
Okay. Anything else, guys?
I'm okay with it. Let's move it forward.
Good.
I need your
Got me, but
other 2 signatures.
there's the magic pen.
Merci. There you go.
Okay. Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
The next item, the Palouse Knowledge Corridor is requesting some funding, and Gina Terusio from the Chamber of Commerce is going to bring that along with Jen Piffner, the assistant to the city supervisor. Ladies?
Good afternoon. I am here, as you have said, to invite you to become a sponsor for the Be the Entrepreneur Boot Camp that is coming up in June of this year. And it is an intensive 4-day boot camp. And since business isn't a 9-to-5 kind of thing, this will not be either. This will be very, very mentor, one-on-one, real homework in the evening and that kind of thing, kind of an event, so that participants will walk away with a business plan that's been vetted, and I guess it's called business model.
Business model,
We should
yes.
use the correct terminology. It's not business plan, it's business model these days. So I'm here to invite you to be a sponsor.
Who would attend this as a participant?
There are 3 different stages of entrepreneurs. There is the early stage, just a cool idea, can we make it go, kind of a entrepreneur. There is an entrepreneur who has an idea and some initial funding and wants to move it forward from there. And then there is the growth phase company. These people have a business already going, and they're either spinning off a cool technology or moving to the next step with the existing technology they have. We have 3 different tracks that are 3 different subject matter areas that would be included in this. Value-added ag, so again, really, really important for our region. Veterinary and animal health, again, and then technology spin-off or tech transfer. So, does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think that, the city's been supporting the Palouse Knowledge Corridor for some while.
Yes, sir.
And I think that it behooves us to support this initiative as well as position ourselves to reap the benefits of these entrepreneurs who go through the training and want to launch a business with the eye towards keeping them here in town to bolster our economic base and diversify it somewhat. So I think it's a good idea, and the amounts being asked for are not particularly egregious for what I would hope we would get out of it, perhaps intangibly, but in the long run.
Thank you.
I agree with Art that this is something that, we've kind of been talking about this for a while as far as helping some businesses pull them up through and get them going. I'm in favor of it.
Gina, this is not limited to local people,
No, sir, not
Okay.
at all.
and it's not cheap.
No, sir.
You're looking for 50 people at $1,500 apiece?
Yes, sir.
75,000? Mm-hmm. Why do you need 2,500 from the city of Moscow?
The $75,000 that you're speaking of is a small part of the overall budget. Because of the way the boot camp is set up, there are keynote speakers, there are lodging costs, there are things like that, plus mentors, instructors, classrooms, that sort of thing. So it is a small part of the overall budget. Is that fair? Mm-hmm.
I've heard some conversation that this may or may not take place this year or fly this year. Is that, where are y'all now? Do you think it's going to happen? Do you think it may get pushed back a year? What's your...
We moved last Thursday
Yep.
to go ahead and make a run at it this year.
Okay.
So we are going to hold it this year.
So this is not
2014.
this is not a pledge request, this is a cash request.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You still good?
I like you say, we're not the only ones that you're asking
No, sir.
for money for.
No, sir.
I mean, that's I think, is another big part of it, that, it's not just us, but it would behoove us to become a stakeholder in it.
Yes,
So you're still good,
I'm still good with it.
but don't consent.
Do we have a line item that this is going to be funded from?
We have not identified a line item yet. I can work with finance and include that in the recommendation.
And will it be before October, current fiscal year? Or
It will
the
be
next?
current fiscal year, this June.
Okay.
Fiscal year.
Okay.
We'll talk.
Okay.
All right.
Maybe we have to look through some seat cushions for some change or something.
Council
Okay.
does have listed a reserve.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
There's a problem with that one. We'll talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not your problem, our problem. Okay. Tyler Palmer has broken out the tie and come to see us about the weed spraying program.
It's that time of year again.
Hey, Tyler.
Afternoon, gentlemen. All right, this is our annual weed spray program that we have before you. It's a program that's been in place for many, many years. It's we have within the city, we have a lot of right-of-way, and we try to keep the weeds under control in the right-of-way. We have a list of noxious weeds that we're required to control. And that we'll get weeds just in places like the crack between the curb and the gutter, cracks in the streets, areas like this that causes problems. And so this is the contract to have our local contractor, Show Brothers, take care of the weeds in the right-of-way throughout town for us. There was some poor wording, I believe, in the CCSR. It indicated that the no spray made it so that people they maintain the weeds on their own property and the right-of-way adjacent to their property. They're always responsible for their own property. The right-of-way adjacent to their property is what's indicated in the no-spray list. And so the no-spray list allows people who prefer to do the weed control without having our contractor come around and spray in front of their house. We have several people that participate in this list. They can call. We place them on a list, and they are then responsible to perform that weed control on the right-of-way adjacent to their property. Where we've had instances where people have signed up for the list and there's weeds that haven't been maintained, we let them know, and typically that's taken care of it. They go out and they take care of it when we let them know about it. Most of the people that do request to be on the no-spray list are pretty actively involved in it and keep an eye on it and take care of it. So that's a way for us. We have areas that have, they'll have certain types of farming that they're doing here locally that they prefer not to have the chemicals sprayed around their gardens, those sorts of things, and so we allow them to be placed on that list.
Tyler, if you're spraying an entire street, you can have a particular address that says, don't spray in front of our house. That's what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct. The contract this year is a $365.87 increase over the previous year's contract. We hadn't seen an increase since 2012. It represents a 2.9% increase. The inflation rate over the same period was 3.54%, so it seems to be a pretty reasonable request for an increase. Product costs have gone up.
And Schull has done this for years and years for us?
Several years. And one of the real advantages we have to having Schull, who's a local contractor, do this is they know the area really well. They're familiar with our trouble spots. There are areas that we will just get weeds that come back. They're also very familiar with our no-spray list. Most people on our no-spray list are repeat participants in the no-spray list, and so it's been a very good relationship that we've had with them.
My question was, has anybody else given a proposal other than Show Brothers ever?
Not to my knowledge, not since I've been here or in the records that I've pulled up. We've seen pretty reasonable increases. I would anticipate if we saw something that seemed out of line that then we would take that out and open that up for bid again. Just the institutional knowledge that exists at this point.
But nobody's approached the city, to your knowledge, and said, how do I get in on this?
I have not been approached about a desire to submit a bid.
Okay.
As far as the chemical list has been, it was sent each year. We send it to the Sustainable Environment Commission to have them look it over. We had no additions to the chemical list this year. We had one deletion, which was Vengeance, which was no longer available. The manufacturer is no longer selling that, which is why it's not on the usage list anymore. And the Sustainable Environment Commission had no problems with the program as it's been presented. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
What percentage of the city's streets do you spray under this program?
Well, we canvass all city streets. The spraying's done.
Spray those that need it.
Spraying's done as needed.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope, I'm good with that. I mean, it's nice to, like Tyler said, have somebody that knows where they're going as far as where the trouble spots are and who doesn't want sprayed. Because I know that if you do where they don't want it, that phone is pretty hot.
Yeah, it's warm.
And it's part of the upkeep that the city needs to do, and I was glad to see in the public notice the little clause, "and is willing to control weeds themselves." So, good.
So do you get the county weed superintendent involved in that, or do we just handle that at?
There have been instances where we have. Typically, like I said, a knock on a door is enough, but we have had one or two instances where we've had the county involved.
Okay.
Okay, Bill, let's put this on consent and ask Tyler to clean up the description that's got the confusing wording in it, please.
Absolutely.
For that. Okay, thank you, Tyler. Okay, the next item. Scott Bontrager is going to talk to us about the 2014 Sidewalk Program Contract Award. We're doing sidewalks again.
Yep, it's that time again. So the first project I was going to discuss with you is the bid results for our 2014 sidewalk program. This particular one we put out the bid on February 21st and solicited to 4 local contractors, of which we got 3 responsive bids back. And of those 3 responsive bids we received for the program, the prices ranged anywhere from $59,500 to $88,480. The engineer's estimate for this particular program for this year was $59,990, which is based upon the historical data and prices that we've paid in the past 2 years of the program. And the quantities that we estimated to get the item pricing for this particular program are also based upon the quantities that we have seen over the past couple of years. So it's a little more realistic for the contractors to bid upon the quantities that we have.
And you used the word estimated quantities, meaning
as that the program itself is dependent upon the participation that we have from both residents wanting to participate in the program, the amount of money that we put in for our own sidewalk projects and pedestrian ramp projects within it, and also for the participation we have from the business district.
I'll give you an opportunity to market your program. The business district is handled slightly differently from the residential area. Property owners are required by ordinance to maintain sidewalks on their property. However, 4 years ago, the city came up with a program offering a share the cost, I'll call it, situation for property owners that wish to get their sidewalks repaired, replaced, or I guess installed.
Yeah.
Okay. And how does that work for the commercial? How does it work for the residential?
For residential, it's within the program we have these fixed prices so that they can join the program at the prices that we receive from the contractor. And then with that, the city then administers all the work for them, getting the particular quote to them so that they'll know exactly what it's going to cost them. Then we administer all the construction inspection and everything else associated with it. And then from the commercial side of things,
well, just to finish the residential, so a property owner of a home with a busted up bad sidewalk that knows he needs to get it done, doesn't have to get the yellow pages out, doesn't have to start looking for contractors, doesn't have to ask his neighbor who'd you used 2 years ago, doesn't have to go get a quote, doesn't have to call a contractor, just call the city.
Yep.
And the city's got all that worked out.
Yep. We'll have the fixed prices so they know exactly what it's going to cost.
Okay.
From the
commercial side?
From the commercial side of it, it's very similar, except for the city participates at 30% of the cost is paid by the city, and the other 70% is paid by the commercial. And it's basically the same process that we provide them with the quote and administer the contract for them at the fixed rates that we have received.
And you've had reasonable participation by both residences and commercial property owners over the last several years?
Over the last several years. I mean, last year alone, I think we had a total of about $116,000 worth of work done, of which maybe a third of that was actual city-participated funds, between a mix of city project itself, fixing certain sections of sidewalk, a lot of residential and a few different commercial areas, having things fixed.
And Gina's paying a lot of attention with the chamber, because she's going to tell her people about how they can get those tripping hazards taken care of.
So, Scott, this, the 56.4 is, or 59.5, wherever I'm looking at, there at 59.5, that's the city's, that's actual cost to the city right now, what we're planning on doing for the city's work, or is that including potential business and
Yes.
personal stuff?
Yeah, this particular contract is set up to guarantee the contractor a minimum of $60,000 worth of work. So, depending on the participation, the city could have to fund it up to a certain amount. But of what we've seen over the past couple of years is typically the city funds about a third of the project.
So what we're saying is if we don't come up with that, we'll come up with some work for them.
Yes.
But this could go beyond, like you said last year, it was 116 or something.
Yeah.
This could go beyond that should we get a lot more
Yes.
business or private participation. Okay.
Yeah.
Does the city have any areas of urgency or priority that would fall under this? Where are we looking this year?
I don't think we have nailed down the exact corridors that we're going to be looking at this year, but we do have a list of hot spots. Maybe Kevin can elaborate.
I don't think he's coming up here to tell you he doesn't know. Come on up.
He was waiting to see if you knew.
Mr. Lilly.
Truth is, I don't know either. What we're going to do in starting this year, this very important issue, is that we're going to determine 10%, the 10% priority for residential areas and 10% of the business district. We're going to inventory, again, those areas, identify the walks that need replacing. Those folks are going to get a letter saying you need to replace your walk. So it's a little hard to estimate how much we're going to have to spend, being in that we have to pay 30% in the downtown district. But we want to start with main corridors, D Street, Blaine Street, the downtown, Jackson, and in Washington and Maine. So also this year with the sidewalk program, we're going to have another contract with that company that cuts the lips off of the sidewalk and removes the tripping hazards. Tyler Palmer and I went out last week looking at spots that were still down in the central business district and think we have plenty to get that company back up here or one similar to them.
And you get good results from doing that?
Absolutely. People really appreciated that. We had a lot of good feedback on that.
You may end up with an uneven sidewalk, but not so likely to catch your toe and fall on your face?
Exactly.
Okay.
As long as it's not too tall to where the point where once you cut it off, the remaining concrete is too thin and would break up. We can do things up to about 2 inches, inch and a half. So.
Okay.
Good by me.
Okay. Consent agenda, please. Thank you, guys.
Well, we'll talk about the next part.
More concrete.
Next item on the agenda is the North Almond Street property purchase agreement. That's
You skipped one.
You skipped
skip one?
Skip the other
Oh,
side.
I saw his name and thought we'd gotten rid of him. I'm sorry, Scott.
He's
Excuse
still
me.
settling in real good.
The pedestrian curb ramp improvement project. I apologize.
So the next project I'm going to present to you here is the continuation of the project that we had applied for last year. This is the next phase. So the 2013 one, which we'll be building this year, included 13 ramps that we're going to build along ITD's system. The 2014 one will include another 9 ramps surrounding around US 95 at Sweet Avenue and down at Steiner Avenue. And this is a yearly grant that's put out by ITD up to $60,000.
This is ITD money.
This is ITD money, of which we are participating with a 10% match. This particular year, we applied for the $53,833 for the 9 ramps that we had estimated it to cost. That with our 10% participation, put it up to that total of $59,814. So we put these also out to bid a few weeks back to, I think it was 8 of local contractors. We received 3 responsive bids back for this one, and we actually got very good bids on this particular project.
The documentation here I've happened to see says you solicited 6.
Okay, yes.
And 3 responded, okay.
The 3 responsive bids were received. They ranged anywhere from $44,075 up to $54,225. Of all the responsive bids, they were all lower than the engineer's estimate, which was based upon the funding that we were receiving for the particular project.
Who picks where these are done?
We apply for them based upon typically corridor. They have different rankings to them. But if we can get the more fixed in a particular corridor, the better, the higher we rank for being able to receive the grant funds for the project.
And by corridor, you mean on a state highway?
Yes. All of them have to be within the state highway, since it's ITD funding for
So
it.
you're talking Maine until it goes to the couplet, Washington, Jackson, and then the Troy Highway and the Pullman Highway? Okay. How many more have you got to do? I mean, we've been doing this for several years. Are we getting close?
Well, this is the second year of the program, using ITD
Well,
funding.
now, the state came through
3 years?
5 years ago
3 and 4, I think a couple times.
and did a lot of them.
Yeah,
And we're now doing those that didn't get done?
yes,
And some of these seem like they're redos as well.
possibly, yes.
Some of the ones at Sweet Avenue.
Are they changes in ADA requirements?
ADA requirements have been updated, yes,
Okay.
which with ITD's requirement, instead of ITD coming through and administering the contract, they're paying the local entities to take the money and administer the contracts for them, which overall we might see better quality control out of it too.
Okay. But back to the question, how many more you got to do? We're going to be hearing about this till the program runs out of money?
We
or-
will be continuing to hear about this probably for years to come.
Okay.
I guess as long as ITD keeps throwing money at us, we'll help them spend it.
You're noble that way, Dan.
Well, it's their money and their right-of-way with,
With our engineers overseeing it, I guess.
apparently. Yeah, I don't have anything else. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good with
Okay.
it, too. I think those are great bids, and
Yes,
but
they are.
honestly, I think McCall's is getting good at it, too, so
Yes.
probably
And
knowing
then
how to
the-
get
They're
it
already
done.
going to be up here working on other things, so that's why we had received such good bids from them.
And then the potential for extending the gap between the bid and what we'd anticipated exists, so we can get some more bang out of that buck.
Yeah, and with the particular funding we're receiving this time, I'm looking for confirmation from ITD right now, but we'll potentially build a few more ramps that will complete the corridor, like the 2013 project we have was doing the ramps along the corridor of the mall frontage, and we were missing 2 of the ramps along there, so we'll be able to pick those up possibly with this.
Spend that other 15 grand then.
Yes.
All right.
Thanks, Scott.
Another consent item, and now we're up to Bill Belknap and buying some property, it looks like.
Afternoon.
Yes, sir.
So this item is related to a possible acquisition of property to support a sewer line crossing that currently exists across the property. The property we're going to be discussing this afternoon is highlighted in purple on the screen. It is the historical railroad property that exists due west of the Rosar Supermarket along Almond Street up to E north of the site. That is the property in question. To provide a little background, that is a prior railroad corridor and right-of-way alignment. City historically has been granted 2 license agreements for utility crossings across the property. The first one was in 1967 from the Great Northern Railroad Company for a 12-inch sewer transverse crossing across the property. That license fee only required a single license fee payment of $25. The second was a license that the city secured in 1981 for a longitudinal 8.5-inch water line and 18-inch sewer main crossing. And in 1981, that was established at an annual license fee of $260 per year. Both license agreements allow for the termination at the license holder's discretion and removal of all facilities with a 30-day notice time period. So these are all traditional railroad license. If you were going to cross their property, you were going to cross underneath their terms and conditions, and they weren't going to allow anything that could impede their ability to control or manage the railroad right-of-way. So this is pretty typical for railway utility crossings and license agreements. Rogalski purchased the property from the railroad, and that annual license fee has been escalated over time. As of last year, we were paying approximately $1,500 per year on that license fee, and on September 26th of last year, the city received a letter indicating that annual license fee was going to be escalated from $1,500 to $5,521.60 per year.
And when was it purchased from the railroad, do you know?
I'm trying to recall the exact date. I don't know that, quite honestly. I would guess it to be the late 90s, but I don't really know for sure in that time period. The utility crossings that we do have, here's the transverse crossing that goes from this manhole to a manhole that's located behind Rosars. And then we have an 18-inch line that's shown in this kind of dark purple, a little bit harder to see, that runs up along the east edge of the subject property and then angles across the property down on the southeasterly corner of the property. In response to the increased annual license fee, staff did analyze options for relocation of both of those sewer lines. The most extensive relocation was estimated to cost $218,000 to conduct. The least extensive was $70,000 and would require new easements to be granted to relocate the sewer lines on that subject property and to obtain new easements for that, which the owner indicated they were not interested in granting. City directed staff to pursue the possible purchase of an easement from the property owner. That was rejected by the owner. The second course of action directed by the council was to look at the purchase of the southern portion of the property where the utility crossings exist on the site. So the area that we've identified is really from that transverse crossing 10 feet to the north would establish the northern boundary line. The area from there all south then would cover all the utilities that cross this property. It's roughly 21,000 square feet in size. It's somewhat of an oddity here in that the property lines actually go out to the center of Allman and go all the way out to the center of E Street. Allman exists on the property on an easement, as does the E Street crossing. So it's a little bit of an oddity in the property boundaries on this site, but it's related to the historical railroad ownership of the property that pre-existed Allman Street in that location.
So before you go ahead, back up to the original bullet slide. Okay, there's a mention in one of them of an 8.5-inch water line.
Was never installed.
Okay, and what we're dealing with are two sewer lines.
Correct. We have the 12-inch sewer that crosses transversely and the 18-inch longitudinal crossing.
Okay, and now to go back to your last aerial, and the property in gray or brown north of the green piece does not have any of our utility lines on it.
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
There is just some storm drainage that goes into a natural drainage way. So there are two storm lines that go into the site, but that's just a natural conveyance and a pre-existing drainage way.
Okay.
So staff has worked with the owner of the property through their agent and has negotiated a purchase price for that southern portion of the property that's at $50,000. That's roughly $2.29 per square foot based upon the entire parcel. If we exclude out the Alma Street right-of-way, it's $2.83 per square foot.
So how much was that? How much is that compared to what we paid for the Columbia Grain property?
I think Columbia Grain property is about $2.91 a square foot, so it's right in the same ballpark.
Okay.
So, we typically see, and this property is owned motor business, typically property values range from $5 to $9 per square foot, although this property does have some challenges, obviously, with utility crossings and topography. It does fall from the site from Auburn, from west to east somewhat. There are some additional expenses that the city would incur. We are in the process of doing Phase 1 assessment. That's $2,600. We'd have to survey the property to establish the location of the sewer main and to establish a legal description to include in the agreement. That ended up being just a little over $800 for the survey work. And there'd be some miscellaneous closing costs that are proposed to be shared between the two parties. So that adds an approximate $4,400 to the overall expense. The survey I originally had anticipated as being somewhat higher than that number. I think we were estimating about $3,000 for the survey. It turns out we were able to get it done for a little over $800. So that work's been completed. So the survey has been completed. The Phase 1 will be delivered the next day or two. Indications from the consultant we hired to conduct the Phase 1 is there's nothing unusual in the property. Nothing showed up on the tank database. Nothing has shown up on the Sanborn maps. So the only thing we'll be made aware of is it was historical railroad right-of-way, and that does mean that there could be some limited shallow metals and also PAHs on the property, not unusual compared to the Lily Asbury property that we purchased. So nothing of extraordinary
What does the
interest
Phase
there.
1 consist of?
It's really a historical research on the property to look at any records of prior and historical land uses, evaluations of any potential contaminant sources in proximity to the site that could have, so if you had a gas station next door, then that would be identified as you could have potentially, depending upon the groundwater gradient, contaminants that could have migrated on the property.
For $2,600, they told us what we knew. It's a railroad?
That is kind of often what occurs in the Phase 1, except that they do much more in-depth historical research, look at the Sanborn maps and look at things that maybe the city may not have as far as the more distant uses of the property. And it is the cost of doing your due diligence to ensure that you're not inheriting.
Is there any soil sampling involved?
There was no soil sampling in this Phase 1. So we didn't do the soil sampling. We did on the Lily and Asbury property. It was an additional $1,800 to do that. But we did that because we were transitioning the property into a park use. And so we wanted to understand any potential mitigation that would be necessary in order to make it usable.
And we had a request for housing on it, too.
We did. At the initial time of acquisition, park was the initial discussion. That's why we did do some limited soil sampling as part of that. We would expect that this corridor is just up, is not probably a half mile, three-quarters of a mile away from that site. We had a very similar constituents on this site, and there were just some limited lead and arsenic and some PAHs from the creosote on the railroad ties. But they're all fairly minimal and really didn't even have to be remediated for a park use. And so with the really no intended use of this property, there's nothing within the environmental report that I'm aware of at this point in time that would cause us any concern with the property. The funding for the acquisition would be funded from the sewer capital fund. Obviously, this acquisition is for a utility crossing for a sewer main for the sanitation system. So staff has prepared a draft property purchase agreement, and we're here to present that to the committee and request your recommendation for approval to the full council.
Bill, I'm a little confused about the timing of things, because I think we're moving rapidly, quickly, and that's not criticism, it's just a comment, because the agreement that we're being asked to agree to talks about allowing the city access to do the Phase 1, but we've already done it, you're telling me.
Correct. We've had a letter of intent that was authorized by the council previously to enter into the negotiations, establish the price. A lot of these provisions came out of the letter of intent, and so we carried those provisions forward. The letter of intent gave us the time for us to complete the due diligence prior to entering into the actual purchase agreement. And so some of this language, actually some of this work has already been completed, but we did, there's language in this draft agreement that refers to access for the survey and the Phase 1 to be completed. That work was all completed underneath the letter of intent.
So does this agreement need to be cleaned up to reflect the current situation?
I think these are all just rights that the owner is granting to us.
You have help coming.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Right, Hall, City Attorney.
So, when you go down to the title company, when you get ready to close, that's when all the real language will be added into the contracts. So this is just an offer to buy, an agreement to purchase the property.
Okay.
But all the details of what the transaction takes place is in, when you do the closing.
So you don't see a problem with language talking about doing things that actually have already been done?
No. that's-
Okay.
No problem with that.
Well, I think it solves, I mean, we would be paying this in 10 years of using the property, so I think that this is an easier way to,
If they don't raise the price?
if they don't raise the price again, so, being a comparable price with the Columbia Grain property, I think it's a good purchase, and, I mean, I imagine there are some potentials there. Dwight's probably licking his chops as far as figuring out something as far as park or something like
Another
that.
park that he hadn't got money to...
That's
for?
right.
No.
Yep.
I'm sure he is.
And there is also the potential of extending D Street at some point, so,
Now you're talking.
yeah, now we're talking. But that's down the road a little ways, but yeah, I think that this works into those, and I'm in favor of moving forward with it.
Yeah, for all of Dan's reasons, I think it makes great sense, and just get rid of a problem that's going to be hanging around otherwise.
Yep. This a regular item?
Full council or consent?
This is consent. There's no reason why it can't be on consent agenda.
Okay. All right. We're in agreement then to move it forward.
Thank you.
We powered right on through.
I hate to say this, but I don't see anything else to keep us here.
You're done.
So we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.